everyone, and welcome to Dojo Live this Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. My name is Kim Lantis, joining from Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. My co-host, as ever, is America Guerrero in Mexico City. Hey, America. And today's guest, the best person of the show today, is Lori Stout, CMO of Bigleaf, joining us from Indianapolis. Thank you for being here, Lori.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel very not exotic. You're both in Mexico, and I'm
No, you've got chickens on your patio, and we already know that there's a squirrel that visits the bird feeder every day. It sounds very exotic and fun to me. I love it. Perfect. So, Lori, we're here to talk all about connectivity, internet connectivity, a really big deal. You can't live without it these days. But before we get into the specifics of today's topic, we'd love to get to know you a bit better. I'm especially always empowered when I meet women who are in the C-suite. I love it. So what's your story? What's your passion? And what's led up to your time with Bigleaf?
Yeah, so my career has been kind of a wild, fun ride. I almost feel like it's been too good to be true, because when you're kind of thinking about what you want to do with your life, you sort of have this career path planned. And ultimately, I knew I wanted to be a CMO of an organization. And just like you, I love to see when women are in the C-suite and women are in leadership roles and really influencing the culture and the dynamic of a company. So I actually got a degree in political science from Ball State University. It's a liberal arts college here in Indiana, and thought I was going to go into politics, which I did for a couple of years. Realized that was a complete and utter dumpster fire, and definitely not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Met some interesting people, but also realized, yep, not for me. So kind of started dabbling in marketing almost by accident. I've always worked in SaaS companies, and from a variety of different roles, from product marketing to customer marketing to Marcom. So I've been really fortunate to have experience in all the different marketing disciplines and kind of figure out what I love and what I'm best at, and what I excel at as a leader. And have found that customer marketing and product marketing are my two marketing loves, which fits really nicely into Bigleaf and kind of connecting what we do here to the customer experience, how we serve our partners and customers, and really how we work on our our product roadmap, how we deliver products and features, what our messaging should be to our audience, and all of that through a customer lens. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been with Bigleaf for about 4 months now. Time flies when you're having fun.
Wow, congratulations.
So, and I feel like I've been here forever and also 5 minutes. So that's kind of an exciting role for me, is if everything feels fresh every day, but you feel very much at home. So it's been awesome.
That's great. Well, congratulations. And I really love your story. So let's talk about Bigleaf and this problem that you solve for your customers.
Yeah, so Bigleaf, if you haven't heard of us, a lot of people associate us with the SD-WAN space. So SD-WAN is really a technology that helps internet traffic prioritization. It helps you stay connected. We're a little bit different than most SD-WAN products. So not to get too technical, but we don't have a security component. So we'll work with any security provider. We sit outside the customer's firewall. So if you have a firewall provider that you love, that you don't want to change, we are a really great fit, because we work with your existing tech stack. We work with any of the internet service providers. And really what kind of sets us apart, and what I love from that customer perspective, again, the customer being IT professionals, is that we just fit in your cloud tech stack, and we act as an asset to that instead of something else that you have to manage and worry about breaking.
Why is the company called Bigleaf? I'm curious, because it's about internet and live. What is the connection?
That's such a good story. So our founders actually named it Bigleaf because there's a tree in Portland where the company's based called the Bigleaf Maple. And if he ever watches this, don't be mad at me, Joel, for saying this, but our leaf is actually not a maple leaf, which that's okay. It's all right. As a marketer, I'm like, well, we really should have a maple leaf if it's a leaf, but it's a really cool logo. If you go to our website, you can check it out, and you'll see that there's kind of a network of veins. And really the founders modeled that after just how amazingly leaves are designed. They have all these veins carrying all of these nutrients to different locations, making sure that the tree, the branches have everything they need. They prioritize the way those nutrients enter the tree and the system. So that's what we really do too. We kind of act like a network of veins and prioritize internet traffic, get it where it needs to go, and keep that whole network really healthy.
That's really interesting. I think you could even take that analogy a bit further in this idea of dropping off, right? Like when this is no longer necessary, that leaf drops, and then new things to grow in different places. And I think that's spectacular. I love it.
Little origin story is the Bigleaf office is right in Portland. It's surrounded by these amazing, beautiful trees. The first time I went to the headquarters, there was a coyote walking through the parking lot. So, and as we talked about before the broadcast started, I'm a huge animal lover and love nature. So it's just a really fun way that they design the company, kind of a relatable way between, how the symbiotic relationship works, what we do, and how your network works.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So that's a really good high level. And I think that actually brings us into a really good intro of the topic that we chose for today.
Yes, actually, my internet is kind of failing, so don't judge me, please. Today,
you look great. You're clear, so don't worry.
So the topic is connectivity in 2023. On engineer the internet of protect your profits. What does your internet connection have to do with your bottom line? As it turns out, everything. So please share with us why this topic is important for today's show.
Sure, absolutely. So I know unengineer is not exactly a real word, so apologies for making you.
It completely is a real word. And I think sometimes it takes a lot of having to think backwards to make things better.
Exactly. So what I mean by that, so the number of people that are connected to the internet continues to grow. I'm not going to say my exact age, but I was around for the first days of the internet. I remember using it in my school library and thinking, I don't know if this is going to catch on. This is kind of cool.
I just remember thinking, what is this god awful sound?
Oh, I know those and
I could hear it.
Terrible. So we've come a long, long way from then. About 5 billion people across the planet are connected to the internet. That's growing every single day. And on top of that, the average company, so kind of small to mid-sized businesses, and they might not even realize this is the tally of all the cloud applications that they use, but they have around 250 applications that they're using every day that in some way or some form rely on internet connectivity, kind of like those veins in the leaf. And the average employee within that company has about 34 applications that depend on cloud connectivity that they're using. So if you think, oh, I'm an IT professional and I have this network of employees, they're using all of these different applications. They're all using them in different ways for different functions. And you have to manage that tech stack and make sure that everything's up and running. Your employees can be on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Slack, whatever the case may be. Just keeping them connected to each other, to your partners, to your customers is critically important. But it is a really complicated spaghetti tangle of different applications that are all doing different things that are all ultimately connected to your internet. So when we talk to these IT professionals, that's one of the biggest things that we hear, the biggest pain point and what keeps them up at night is, okay, I don't necessarily have full oversight into all of these applications that we're adopting and how complicated our tech stack is. It's just my job to make sure that it's working appropriately. So to do that, you really need visibility into every single application that your employees are using. You need visibility into the internet service providers that you're using. And if you have multiple locations, you're probably using multiple internet service providers. Your networks are communicating differently. You're prioritizing different traffic across different networks, and it's complicated. And my brother's an IT guy, and he tells me all the time that when something goes wrong, they don't care what it is, how it happened, where it started. They just want it fixed. Like, just fix it, please. And that's kind of where the beauty of Bigleaf comes in. We were talking before the broadcast about how we're kind of a hardware, software hybrid. So we offer this physical router. It's a cute little white box with 4 ports, so you can connect to 4 different circuits. And it just sits in your tech stack and works in the background to prioritize your internet traffic and tell it where to go. So if you think, for example, a contact center company, most contact center interactions are still happening by voice. You call the customer support number. There's nothing worse than making it through the phone tree or, waiting on hold for a few minutes and then you get disconnected. You have to start all over again.
Yes.
Awful. You don't want to have to repeat yourselves 150 times. You just want to get through that phone tree process and get to who you're talking to. So dropped calls, jittery calls, packet loss where you can't really hear what the person on the other end is saying. You can't get to the information quickly is incredibly frustrating for a company like, a contact center or customer support provider. So what Bigleaf does is they'll say, okay, you have some chats coming in, you have some emails coming in, you have maybe a WhatsApp message coming in, and you have this voice traffic. If voice calls are the most high priority, the most concierge level support, Bigleaf will make sure that those calls are routing the appropriate direction through the appropriate circuits so that those calls are clear and they stay connected. And it's a really good experience for both the agent who's trying to help this customer with their problem, which is not always easy, and for the customer who just wants a quick resolution, wants to get off the phone. And in addition to that, if you think about, so here's where the software component comes in.
Okay, yeah, I'm fascinated. Like, how is this decision being made?
Yes. So we have, it's called intelligent load balancing. So that happens on the back end, and our system monitors constantly, multiple times per second to say, okay, there's a potential roadblock over here. So we're going to reroute this high priority traffic over here. Then on the back end, the IT team can pull up a web dashboard. So this is a really cool software component, and they can see the health of every single circuit that they have connected across every single location that they have. So whether you have 3 locations and each one has 2 circuits, you have 30 locations and each one has 4 circuits, 8 circuits. You can go in by every single location and see, oh, my cable provider is having an issue, or a lot of companies are moving to satellite providers, especially in rural areas. You can say, okay, my Starlink connection isn't working the way that it should. And you can immediately either reach out to a Bigleaf support person and say, okay, I'm having this issue on this circuit. Here's what I'm experiencing, whether it's jitter, latency, or just a loss in quality of that particular communication type. Or you can say, okay, I already know I need to call my internet service provider and tell them that this circuit is or is not working. So that's a really nice way for IT teams who are usually running around like, I know something's broken, I'm not sure where to fix it. They can immediately go to the source of the problem, figure out what it is, call the right people,
I love it,
and get that fixed.
So it's like, I see this as like, like the string of Christmas lights, the classic where you're like, okay, the light's not working, and then you're going one by one to see which bulbs burnt out, right? So they no longer have to do that. They're just like, oh,
exactly. What a great analogy. I'm going to have to steal that if you don't mind.
No, you're welcome.
Exactly what it is. It really pinpoints and shines a light on the problem and where it is and helps you get to resolution more quickly. And on top of that, we have statistics that show kind of the value of Bigleaf and how much you're saving by not having this unusable uptime where it's just really low quality connection, or God forbid downtime that's costing you revenue and brand reputation. So it's a pretty cool marriage of hardware and software together.
It completely is. Let's talk a little bit about the setup. Is this so easy that it's like a plug and chug? I mean, how are these IT folks getting all of these applications, getting all this information in? Is this a hard thing, or how have you approached the usability of it all?
Well, that's another, just kind of going back to what we're talking about with protecting your profits and unengineering the internet. That's really the beauty of what we do. It truly is a plug and play solution. We have a great provisioning team that gets all of the information they need to set that router up. They ship it to you. You can literally be up and running in 5 minutes. Plug it in, put in your IP address, and all of a sudden your internet is working a lot more seamlessly than it was before. You don't even have to think about that downtime. So we tell a lot of our partners and a lot of our clients, don't wait until you're in the middle of that downtime emergency. If you're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a contact center solution, or a unified communication solution, or even on Zoom or Teams, all of these cloud-based applications they're not cheap, and they all rely on that internet connection to work. So we really believe that Bigleaf is like an extra insurance policy to make sure that you never even have that downtime or that unusable uptime. And in fact, we had a webinar a few weeks ago with one of our customers from Hannah Anderson. They're an online clothing provider. And their director of infrastructure said, prior to Bigleaf, they were used to getting shouted at. And after Bigleaf, they're used to getting shout outs, which just made my heart very warm. And I love to hear that again from that customer experience perspective and know that we're really providing value to the people who buy Bigleaf.
That's really fascinating. About the part of what makes it so easy is you mentioned earlier a security component of how you adapt to the security that's already in place.
So
what if somebody needs, or what are some of the concerns that might rise around that?
yeah, so we're not saying that we're a replacement for a firewall or we take the place of any security policy or any security equipment. We're just saying that we're kind of agnostic to who you want to use. So if you have a firewall provider or security provider that's already installed, you don't have to rip them out and replace them in order to use Bigleaf. You can still use the same security policies, firewalls, ISPs. Really, we just kind of fit seamlessly into the tech stack that you have today.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm also curious if your customers are using this as a way to make decisions. So is that like a secondary sort of benefit? I mean, you've got, okay, reliable connectivity, this is great, but are we also able to make decisions of, you know what, this particular provider seems to be failing a lot. Maybe it's time to go with this solution instead. Like what type of data are you able to pull off of that?
That's the beauty of what our web dashboard offers is if you have a connection or a provider that's consistently, I mean, that's your circuit that's always down or it's not performing the way that it should, you can make those decisions. You can go to that ISP or that provider and say, hey, I have a downloaded report here that says exactly how many hours, minutes, seconds you were down. We also have a cost of downtime calculator that shows our customers this is exactly what that could cost you. So there really is a direct impact to downtime if you don't have an SD-WAN or a Bigleaf-like solution in place. Gartner says that downtime can cost $5,600 per minute for the average business. And yes, that's per minute. And in addition to just those costs from lost revenue and from an inability for your business to conduct operations, on top of that, think about the brand reputation. If you're trying to change a flight and you can't get through to that customer service line, if you're late for a connection, you can't reach the person that you're trying to reach. It's just a really bad experience with that brand. And if you put your consumer hat on for a second, I mean, we have a couple of experiences like that. Like, nope, not going to do that again. So that customer experience component is, really priceless when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a couple. It can take just one, and
Totally.
and the bridge has been burnt.
Absolutely.
America, did you have a question? I thought
I'm trying to listen to you girls, but it's kind of impossible right now. I'm sorry.
America needs Bigleaf.
Yeah.
It actually was one of my questions. I mean, what we've talked about here was a lot of business to business. Clearly, that's your market. But what about B2C? Is this clearly we have a very live example right now of how, hey, even the individual user in their homes could benefit from this. Is that a direction you're headed?
So we do have a home office product that literally anybody can install. It's kind of the same thing. It's provision. You set up your IP. We really serve those businesses who have remote workers. That's kind of our sweet spot. So distributed locations where you have multiple physical headquarters, but you also have something that we refer to as sites. So for example, America has a site, Kim has a site. You would each benefit from a Bigleaf router. You could not only have the visibility of that web dashboard, but if you had, say, a wireless circuit and a hardwired circuit, you could still prioritize the traffic and get everything needed where it needs to go or moved where it needs to go. Likewise, you could communicate back and forth between the home office. If you have a hybrid situation where some of our employees go into the Portland office and some days they're working from home, that's another added benefit of kind of this remote culture that we're in today where, you don't have to worry about, I'm going to do a podcast today and will my connectivity be appropriate for me to do that from home or do I need to commute into the office? It really just protects those options for some of those hybrid offices.
That's absolutely fantastic. I get it a lot. What about going outside of the United States? Is this something that's also on your roadmap?
So we have 12, they're called POPs, points of presence across the globe, and, continuing to evaluate new areas where we would like to expand. So today we have POPs in Europe, so we can support those global organizations. We do most of our business in North America today, but we have a couple of big clients in Germany, and so we're really excited to see how that goes and how we can kind of help with some of those unique issues that those global customers have, whether it's unique security issues. So maybe they're less likely to want to replace their security provider. They have GDPR and all different compliance issues to think about. We just fit really seamlessly inside that tech stack. So really excited to see what happens on an international basis, and then of course continue to serve North America, which we've done for about 10 years now.
For sure. With 5 billion, you said 5 billion with a B, individuals using the internet, there's definitely a lot of space where companies like Bigleaf are necessary.
Yeah.
Was it hard to get cybersecurity partners in other countries with your clients in terms of regulations and laws? I don't know, how complex is that process?
Sure. That's a really good question. And it's still something that we're trying to fully understand today. So we're building a technology ecosystem. In fact, I just hired a leader for that program who started this week. And right before I talked to you, I got off the phone with him. I'm just like, this tech ecosystem is going to be just amazing for our partners and our customers. So as part of that, we're going to talk to the security providers and find out how we can really be an asset to what they're doing too, really understand what their procedures and policies are, and partner with them so that if they're talking to a customer that is like, well, I really love working with this security company, but I need the additional layer of network optimization or additional security that my internet is not going to go down, then we'll have those partnerships in place so we can really prove the value of what we do and how it just enhances what they're trying to do for the customer, and it'll work hand in hand.
Yeah. And I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing, because the more and more connected we get, the more and more, like we said at the beginning, we rely on the internet. Here in Hermosillo, just a few weeks back, I don't even know what happened, to be honest, but like the internet was down on pretty much the entire city across multiple providers. And I remember I was at the office actually where I am today, and the internet was down here. And I thought, well, that's weird, because clearly the office, great IT team, it's definitely a more reliable place to be. And I was like, well, it's about lunchtime anyway. I'll just go home and work from home. And I get home and I'm like I use my cell phone to open the gate to the community I live in. And like, I don't have cell service, I noticed. And I was like, okay, weird. So I get out and I use the card, and then I get home and I'm getting out and there's no internet in my house either, which is a completely different provider than what we have at the office. And I was like, what is going on? And this is terrible and sad, but I'm like, is it the terrorists? Like, did something happen? And then I'm like, I don't even have like a land phone or anything. And I'm completely disconnected from the outside world. Like, without the internet, I don't watch TV. I don't have access to news. I don't have access to anything. Like, I have no idea what's going on.
I constantly, if the internet's disconnected, I'm shouting at Alexa to turn on my lights and do all these things. Alexa, it's amazing until your electricity goes out or your internet goes out. You don't think about how many different ways we're connected. And I was thinking through that. I was like, 36 cloud apps, is that true? And I was going.
Then you start counting.
I was like, yep, that's true.
Yeah, it's completely true. So we're here at the final few minutes of our show today, Lori. So I'd like to bring it back to you. And again, being a woman here in the C-suite, you have achieved your goal, which is fantastic. Tell us a bit more to that story and maybe what that was like for you, maybe advice, some do's and don'ts that you might have for other women who'd like to follow suit.
That is a great question. And in fact, my daughter was asking me about that the other day, which was really sweet. I was like, you actually want to know what my career's like? That's awesome. But I told her it took me a long time to feel comfortable speaking up. As women, I think we particularly struggle with imposter syndrome. We don't feel like our opinion is as valid as the loudest person in the room. And you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. I want to be the kind of leader that listens, but is definitely not afraid to share when I have a good idea. So that's what I try to instill in my team, in my kids, in myself, is to, when you think maybe I'm not the right person for this role, or maybe somebody in this room knows more than I do, you're in that role for a reason. I'm very fortunate to work with an executive team that actually is all men, but they're men who listen to me. We're great partners in everything that we do. Our CEO is wonderful. He treats every single person on the executive team as a partner instead of, an employee of his. And it's just a wonderful culture to empower different people groups, empower women in addition to men. And it's been just a really great environment to be in. So I look forward to seeing how that grows, how I can promote some people on my team and help them continue to build that Big Leaf culture and really make it stronger and stronger.
I love it. Thank you. Do you have any particular or techniques, tactics, lines that you have found useful for speaking up? Like, what's your approach when it comes to interjecting, or
Or did you read a book that would you recommend?
You know what? My favorite business book, which also every time I read it, my heart just kind of pounds, is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It's such a good book, but I read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, Kim, how do you do this? But if you just adopt little pieces and parts of that, it really boosts your confidence. And for me, I don't enjoy conflict. I want everybody to be having a really good day. But when I read that book, I thought, you know what? When I have these hard conversations with my peers or with my team, I'm really doing them a service. I'm not doing them a disservice. I'm helping them be better at their jobs. I'm, really, it's more of a nice thing to do for them than to keep quiet and watch them make a mistake. So that book has been wonderful for me. And then in combination with that, there's an expression, I have no idea who said it, but said, if you worry about how much people think about you, you'd be surprised to know how little they don't. So I think we have a hesitancy to speak up, and we're afraid that we're going to look dumb, or people are going to, later be like, oh my gosh, can you believe Lori said that? People forget about that stuff. It's not important. And that's what I love about the Big Leaf culture. It's very collaborative. We're all part of a team. Brainstorming, which can be a terrifying exercise, is actually really fun and really helpful to all of us. So don't be afraid to speak up, because if you're in the right place in the right role, you're doing exactly what you need to do.
Yeah. And I think one of my takeaways too, I noticed when you were talking about Kim's book, the Radical Candor book, that it was every time I read it, right? So you've read it more than once. And I think that also alludes to something of a learning attitude, and this attitude of grace, I think, toward ourselves. The idea that it's probably impossible for me to absorb all of this or learn everything that I can learn the one time, the second time, the third time. And I think this attitude and this hope for continuous improvement, right? Absolutely. Even though we're probably never going to reach perfection, I think it's the path toward it that's the exciting part.
Such a good way to say that. And leadership is a muscle that you have to exercise. It continues to get stronger. You use it in different ways. And, reading things like that over and over again that resonate with you just really helps you kind of flex that muscle and build it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lori, for spending your valuable time with us today, for sharing with us your story, the Big Leaf story, this amazing mashup between, I think, hardware and software that you're creating. That's really a important niche. And I think, like you said, this unengineering and this connectivity that maybe we're not always thinking about, but what that downtime actually is costing us, and that there's quite a simple solution out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to meet you both.
You're welcome. The pleasure is ours. Stick around for just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, I'd like to remind our viewers that we have our recap show on Monday morning, also at 10 o'clock Pacific. There we'll talk all about our insights and how our souls were fed and our minds were fed with our conversation with Lori, as well as introducing the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We've got 3 shows coming up next week. So don't miss it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.